Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm still in Scotland. I'm in Perth. This is the River Tay. I'm at the spot that once was the port of Perth, right at the top of High Street where I'm staying. I'm in Scotland. This is the trip that I came to do the pilgrimage to the Isle of Iona. Before I go into the subject of today's talk, I want to talk about how one of my favorite things to do when I come things about coming over here to Scotland now and Ireland in times past is just the accents. Hearing the accent again. Make sure my mic is on. This time when I got off the plane, I went to change some dollars into pounds to start the trip with. And the guy said, asked me what I was doing here. Was I here on pleasure or business? And I said I was here to do a pilgrimage to the Isle of Iona. And he had kind of a confused look on his face. He didn't really know what the Isle of Iona was. And I said, it's a small island off the coast of the Isle of Mull. And he said, Mull? And I said, yeah. And he goes, Bass begotten a wee jacket. I almost cracked up laughing. It was so much fun. This video is a story from the pilgrimage that I did back in 2017, which is called the Reconquista in Spain, one of the routes of the Camino. But the story started in 2016. In 2016, I was doing the French route, and it was just a very difficult trip. It was a lot of personal conflict and just a very emotionally wrenching time. And my brother-in-law Tim was emailing me back and forth and trying to encourage me. And he said, John, I think I have a sense that there's someone that you're going to meet on this particular trip that you're intended to meet. This trip is about you meeting somebody that's going to play a role in your life. And for those of you who don't know Tim, first off, he's one of the most godly people I know. I think most people would say that. But he's one of these people who have an uncanny ability to hear the Holy Spirit clearly. And when Tim tells you that he believes the Holy Spirit is saying something to him, he's usually not in any doubt. And so I was kind of hopeful that I would meet somebody on that particular trip, and I really didn't. And I thought that was very strange. Well, about 2 or 3 months after I got back, I got an email from a gentleman that I did meet. I met he and his wife were hanging out in some hammocks that I was supposed to hang out in to rendezvous with a friend of mine. And he introduced me to an organization called Marked Men for Christ. And I got involved in that. He was involved in Marked Men for Christ in Germany. And he said, there's a bunch of the men here from Germany. We're thinking of doing the pilgrimage of the Camino in Spain this coming summer. We're going to do the Reconquista. Do you want to go with us? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. Bear in mind, I met him in the town of Sarria in northern Spain. And he told me about an organization called Marked Men for Christ that he was part of in Germany. And the organization started in Colorado. So it ended up only being 3 of us that went on the Reconquista. Backstory on the Reconquista, it's in northern Spain in the state of Cantabria, and it follows along the beginning of the route that El Cid used to take his soldiers to begin the effort to drive the Moors out of Spain, the reconquest of Spain, which is why it's called the Reconquista. It goes through the park in Spain called the Picos, which is sort of like Spain's version of Yosemite. It's a beautiful, beautiful park. Very, very mountainous, very sheer cliffs, high cliffs, peaks, Picos. It's beautiful, but very dangerous. If you want to see the Picos, I would suggest that you see it from your car. We were walking from a spot just outside of the little village of Torrelavega, and we were going to be walking to the town of Oviedo. They were going to continue on. We were all going to continue on the primitive route from there. During that walk on the Reconquista, we were in serious danger. At one point, a giant rock almost fell on us, and that's another story. But there's a point on that particular part of the trek where you have to climb up the side of a cliff, and the distance that you climb, if it were laid out flat, would be about 1.5 kilometers. But the pitch of the climb is about twice as steep as the staircase. So imagine climbing up a set of stairs twice as steep as a staircase, about a mile long. And that's what that section of the trip was like. By the time we got to the top, we started at about 1 o'clock at that point. We got to the very, very top around 3, a little bit before 3, 2:30, somewhere around there. We were exhausted, so we decided to lie down and take a little nap, 15, 20-minute nap, because we were supposed to be arriving at the place we had planned to spend the night at around 3 o'clock, so we didn't have much further to go. When we got up and started walking again, we realized pretty quickly there was no trail. We had lost the trail. We had no idea where it was. The instructions that we had about the Reconquista were the contents of an email that Christian had received from his friend. And we quickly discovered that all of the instructions were wrong. None of the landmarks that were mentioned in the email were even there. We couldn't find anything. There were no roads, there were no buildings, there was no trail, there was no people. The only living thing that we saw that wasn't a plant were goats, and I'm pretty sure they were not domestic goats. By 4 or 5 o'clock, when we did not see the sanctuary, we knew we were in trouble. Now, I need to mention that the Camino, every year there's always stories that go up and down the Camino about people who died on the Camino or who went missing. Every year, something like that. And I could tell that all three of us were thinking, we were that next story. Did you hear about those 3 guys from Germany, although I'm not from Germany, who got lost in the Picos and died of dehydration? We just knew, we were all 3 thinking the same thing. We were going to be the next story. And by 5 or 6 o'clock, we ran out of water at 1 o'clock. So by 5 or 6, I was kind of in serious trouble. I'm older than the other 2, and I was getting kind of goofy. And we still, no sign of life, no road, no landmark we could recognize. We knew we were in trouble. To make the long story short, we continued walking until 10 o'clock that night before we knew anything. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we were walking at 10 o'clock at night, bearing in mind that in the middle of that day, we made a huge climb that alone would have knocked you out. And then we noticed 2 tracks on the ground that had to have been made by a vehicle. They were just ruts in the dirt, but we knew that there was a vehicle that made those, and that sooner or later that trail would probably connect to a blacktop, and if we found it, we could get back. We wouldn't end up dying of exposure and dehydration in the middle of the night. Incidentally, there was a woman who the year before died of dehydration in the Picos, and when they found her, she was 150 yards from a pond. That's how dangerous it is up there. We walked until we found the blacktop, and we were thinking we would just sleep on the blacktop and maybe make a big pile or something so the cars that would be coming would not hit us. They would stop. They'd see us in time. And as we were walking on this little blacktop lane, we saw lights of a town, and it was encouraging because we knew there was a town there, but you could tell that it had to be at least 10 kilometers away. So there was no way that we would make it to that town at that night. We were going to sleep somewhere. And then around 10 o'clock, 10:30, we saw the headlights of a vehicle on the road. We knew that they were coming our way. So we knew all we had to do was stand there and wave, and they would stop, which we did, and they did. And it was a van. It turned out to be the people coming from the refuge where we were supposed to be sleeping, where we were supposed to have arrived 3 o'clock that afternoon. 8 hours later, they were looking for us. They were driving in this van. And even while I was sitting in the van, I was thinking, this is a dream. I'm asleep. I'm dreaming this. I wasn't. I was pretty badly into dehydration. We got to the refuge, the building, and they asked us to keep our voices down because there were still people sleeping in the refuge, and they mentioned that they had made some dinner for us. So they walked us into this pretty big dining area, but there were no lights. It was completely black except for this one light that was shining down on a little two-top table, and you could see that was all you could see was this table with this light above it shining down on it, and you could see that there were two big 2-liter bottles of water. I remember a bowl of peaches, a bowl of spaghetti, and 2 loaves of bread. I'll never forget it. The image of that is solidly in my mind. And I remember thinking, and this is absolutely, all these stories are true, by the way. I'm not making any of this stuff up. I don't have to. But I remember thinking to myself, that wasn't so bad. That didn't hurt at all. That wasn't so bad. I'm glad that's over with. I was literally thinking that I had died. I was thinking I must have died. I don't remember the exact moment where I died, but I must be dead. I've died and gone to heaven. And that's why I wanted to keep this as one of the stories that I tell on the pilgrimages, because I actually did think that I had died and gone to heaven. Thanks again for watching the video. Y'all take care, and God bless. I hope I got it.